Hello everybody, how are you guys? We're out here on a beautiful day in Pittsburgh, and man, we're getting so much reaction from our videos about this great town. And one of the more exciting things is focusing on players from the great sports teams, from their history, from their decades past, that maybe not forgotten, but perhaps need to be put the spotlight back on them. And you know, the Steelers have so many great players, the Pirates and the Penguins. And since we've been focusing on the Penguins, let's look at three more Penguin players from the great Penguins teams of the past. And in the 1930s, there was a player named Ivan Fashiowski who played on the Russian team over in Russia for a couple years, and then was probably one of the original or one of the first, I'm not sure who it was, Russian player to come over to the National Hockey League. In 1932, came over to the Penguins. And this guy, he was known for every game, he would line up shots of vodka on the boards in front of him. And before every shift, he'd take one shot of vodka. That was his thing. And he said they've been doing that in Russia since they were 7 years old. So the team was like, all right, whatever. You know, of course you wouldn't get away with that today. There's too many rules, it's not safe, it doesn't set a good example, there's a million reasons. But that was the thing in the 30s, and they let it slide because they were trying to get the league going, they were trying to get the team going, and the guy was a great player. So then the next player on our list is, again, from those decades in the middle of the last century, 1943. During the war, there was a shortage of players on the Penguins. And so they started recruiting guys from local high schools. And there was a 16-year-old phenom who played for the Penguins in 1943 through 47. He was only 16 years old. Now, they had to fake his age to get him to be able to play in the league. They had an 18-year-old, very strict rule. You had to be 18. And everybody in the know knew this guy was only 16, but again, they kind of looked the other way. Nobody really cared. And his name was Charlie Interblock. And Charlie Interblock was half Polish, half Finnish. And from his mom was Finnish, his dad was Polish. And both his dad and mom played hockey. His mom played on several championship women's teams. And of course, so he inherited quite a hockey talent. The guy was a phenomenal player, played for the Penguins. He led his high school to the state championship right before he was drafted, and then played for the Penguins after that. And he got a lot of ice time because, again, they were short players during the war, during the latter part of the war. And then once those players started coming back, he had to make room for them and got less ice time. But was always a fan favorite just because he was a phenomenal stick handler and playmaker at such a young age. And finally, the third player in our spotlight on Pittsburgh Penguins past is a guy from 1971. And again, this is the go-go years of the early 70s, where fashion and long hair was the order of the day. If you could picture Derek Sanderson of the Flyers and all those guys from those days, let's just say they didn't get home early. Let's just put it that way. And this guy on the Penguins from those days, his name was Richard Workey, and they called him the Workster because. And they weren't talking about his work ethic on the ice. I mean, he was a good player, but let's just say he missed a few practices due to late night rendezvous. But they call him the Workster because that guy could walk into any bar and with his British accent from growing up in Britain before he moved to Pittsburgh right after prep school, to his status as a professional hockey player, to his good looks, the Workster could get any young lady he wanted. And in those days, he did. he took advantage of all of those things. And but he was not unusual in those days, honestly, that there was a lot of partying going on. And nonetheless, despite being a fan favorite, he was also a very productive player. He wasn't a star. He wasn't at the top of the scoring list or anything. But as a defenseman, he didn't have to be. He just had to, clear the slot and keep the puck pressure on in the other zone, and then ice the puck when they had to. And that's what he did. And as soon as that final siren sounded at the end of the game, he showered, shaved, and shoved off to the nearest nightclub. That was his whole thing. And then afterwards, he owned a window blind company in the Pittsburgh area. Then sold that, moved to Florida, bought himself a roller derby team, and managed that until he retired. And then I think he's still down there. I'm not sure. We'll have to find out more about if the Workster is still with us. But guys, there you go. 3 amazing players from the Pittsburgh Penguins archives that we're putting a spotlight on today, because a lot of times these players get lost through history. They're not the big stars. They don't get all the attention that they should. But again, they're all fan favorites. People loved them, and there's a reason why.